wonderful. Come on, get to your worship place. Is it your car? Is it in your bedroom? Is it in your kitchen while you cook? Whatever your worship place is, this is your worship experience. So let's make sure that we are all ready to join in and to worship. I'm Pastor Kim from Greater Joy Baptist Church in Butner. We are located at 307 Central Avenue in the big city of Butner, North Carolina. We believe in the promises of God, and we believe in the promise that is within each and every one of you. It's so wonderful to be able to worship here today with you virtually. We are looking forward to a wonderful experience, just us together. Yeah, you and your screen, us few people that are here in the sanctuary, just communing and fellowshipping one with another. Listen, it does not matter whether or not we are able to touch each other or see each other as normal. Worship begins in the heart. It is what connects us. And if we get in tune and get focused, listen, I just believe that we'll be able to feel each other in the spirit. I believe if we focus and get our minds on one thing, because it said where two or three are gathered, touching and agreeing on the same thing. So if we all get our mind on worship, that's the same thing. If we all get our mind on worship, then I just believe that God can travel throughout the airwaves and connect us together. Listen, I was glad that they said it to me. Come, let us go into the house of the Lord. I believe that the Lord is great, and He is greatly to be praised. If I had 10,000 tongues, it would not be enough to bless Him for all that He's done. Come on, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt His name together. Let's get ready to enter into worship. Come on, put your hands together. Let's give God some glory. Let's go. Let's go. In the city. Can I just make it relevant for today? We are blessed in a pandemic. We are blessed in an economic crisis. We are blessed. Yeah, no matter what comes and no matter what goes, we are blessed. Listen, it is so awesome to be in worship on today, thanking God for a beautiful holiday season. As Brother Rodney shared this morning, teaching at our family Bible class, which is on Sunday mornings from 8:20 to 8:50 on the Greater Joy page. and on Brother Rodney's page. We just believe that, we just hope that everyone had a beautiful holiday, and that God was able to move. We ask for your prayer for our family, as my father, Bishop James Daniel, lost his brother, who will be funeralized tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. It'll be a graveside service, trying to keep everybody safe, but just be in prayer for us about noon on tomorrow, particularly praying for our prelate, the Bishop James Daniel, but not just us, all people who are, I have lost people, all people who are struggling during this season, missing somebody that they wanted to be with so bad during this holiday season. We just want to make sure that we continue to lift each other in prayer. Listen, we're getting ready to go into our moment of giving, but a couple of things I want to remind us is that on Thursday night, which is New Year's Eve night, we are going to be celebrating with the Joys, Greater Joy Rocky Mount, Greater Joy Roanoke Rapids, and Greater Joy Butler. So be on the lookout for that amazing collaborative celebration on Thursday night. But listen, we're doing a double, because we are also celebrating with our wonderful partners here in Granville County, Pine Grove, Union Chapel, Mount Vernon, here in the Granville County area. We just want to bring in the new year with a bang. Listen, 2020, when we get to Thursday, it deserves a celebration. Because I don't know about you, but for me, it took a whole lot to get here to this last week of 2020. Let's get ready to give. If you're going to give via PayPal, it is greaterjoybutner@gmail.com. If you're giving via Cash App, it is $GJ Butner. Please make sure to note whether it is for your tithe, whether it is a free will general offering, whether it is for pastoral support. Here at Greater Joy Butner, we operate on the model that I am paid based on pastoral support, and we ask all of our members to give $5 a week in that pastoral support. And I am so grateful for all of you who have continued to be faithful to that model throughout this pandemic. Even though you couldn't touch me and didn't get to see me a lot, still made sure that I was taken care of, and I'm grateful for that. I don't take it for granted. And then for our partners who are not a member of Greater Joy, who have sown into my life, thank you so much for all of your blessings. Will y'all play right quick for us? Come on, get ready to give. GreaterJoyButner@gmail.com. Cash App, $GJ Butner. Amen. Thank you so much for giving, for all of you. And if you hesitated there, go down. Time has not passed. It is still time to be able to give your tithe and your offering to the Lord. Listen, we're getting ready to go into our praise and worship period. But as you know, what we've been doing the past couple of weeks is, before we go into praise and worship, we do a moment of evangelism. So find one person, come on and share. Invite them into the worship party. Just one, not one you've done before, unless the Spirit leads you to try one more time. But invite somebody into worship, just like we would if we were here in the sanctuary. We would invite somebody to church. Let's make sure that we are still evangelizing, even in the virtual world. Come on and reach out to somebody right now. Come on, do it right now. Just press it. Just press it. And let's get ready to go to worship. Come on, let's get our hearts ready, our minds ready to worship the Lord. He's worthy. He's so good and kind. Yeah. He's been too good for me not to worship. Yeah. Hallelujah. See, here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Sing down, here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Here I am, Lord. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful. Wake up, here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that sing hallelujah. You have won the victory. Sing hallelujah. You have won for me. Sing down, down to you. For you are king. You are Lord, see
I'll never know how much it costs to see my sins upon the cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sins upon the cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sins upon the cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sins upon Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful.
Yes, God's been wonderful to anybody. Come on, lift your hands for just a moment and tell him thank you. Yeah, just a moment of worship. That's why we came here, was to worship. Yeah, come on, it's not a television show. We're here to worship. Yeah, take just a moment to say something to him. Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he magnificent? Tell him, worship. When I look back over my life and all the things that he's been to me, I gotta worship. Yeah. Come on, I'm here. Here I am to worship. Say it to him. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. Just a moment to worship. I don't know about anybody else, but I just need a moment. Yeah. Thank you, Lord. Let's get ready to go to the Word of God today. Finishing up our series on little known miracles. Next week, starting a new series called Conversations with God. Let's go to the Bible in basic English version, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse number 1. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse number 1. And it says, "Now a certain woman, the wife of one of the sons of the prophets, came crying to Elisha and said, 'Your servant, my husband, is dead. And to your knowledge, he was a worshiper of the Lord. But now the creditor has come to take my 2 children as servants in payment of his debt.' Then Elisha said to her, 'What am I to do for you? Say now what you have in the house.' And she said, 'Your servant has nothing in the house but a pot of oil.' Then he said, 'Go out to all your neighbors and get vessels, a very great number of them. Then go in, shut the door on yourself and your sons, put oil in all these vessels, putting on one side the full ones.' So she went away, and when the door was shut on her and her sons, they took the vessels to her and put the oil in them. And when all the vessels were full, she said to her son, 'Go get me another vessel.' And he said, 'There is no more.' And the flow of oil stopped. So she came to the man of God and gave him word of what she had done. And he said, 'Go and get money for the oil and make payment of your debt, and let the rest be for the needs of yourself and your sons.'" Will you guys capture this topic for me in the comments? And y'all in here repeat after me and say, "A call to quarantine." Yeah, a call to quarantine. I fully realize that the last thing that anybody wants to talk about is quarantine. I know. Everybody is absolutely sick of, fed up, and over it when it comes to quarantine, because the majority of 2020 has been nothing but one level or another, one form or another of quarantine. And one part of this has been the imposed government mandates, separation caused by curfews, the closing of social venues, and limits on gatherings, eliminating many of the interactions that we're used to and reducing our ability to come together for safety reasons. For those of us who have been exposed to COVID-19 or to someone with COVID-19, there are what I would coin medical quarantines. For a brief period, we must withdraw from society, limiting the possibility of transmission from one to another. This is meant to check the spread of the virus and reduce overall sickness and death among us. And then some of us have self-quarantined in an effort to reduce risk and protect ourselves and our families. We've made a conscious decision to separate ourselves from our usual and customary interactions. We've scaled back our outings and cut down on family functions and reduced our acceptable crowd sizes. And although necessary, effective, and prudent, quarantine is challenging. Even the most introverted people, Minister Latasha, desire some amount of human interaction. So whether mandated by government, necessitated by health, or selected by choice, quarantine, isolation, seclusion, confinement, separation is never easy. As a matter of fact, it goes against our basic human nature. It pushes us outside of what comes naturally, which is to interact, to be with others, to fellowship, and to intermingle. Is it anybody besides me that's sick to death of quarantine? Yeah, I know all of us are quarantined at different levels, but regardless of how it has impacted your life, am I the only one that has had just about enough of my level of quarantine? I don't know about you, but I like to go to the farmer's market and the Costco and taste all the free samples, but I can't because of quarantine. I like to talk to the produce man at Carly C's and ask what fruit is sweet this week, but it's hard to do that, to talk to him when I'm all masked up in quarantine. And y'all already know, I miss sitting in Olive Garden and taking my time, eating a bunch of breadsticks without feeling anxious. But I can't do it because I'm in quarantine. Anybody sick of quarantine? Listen, I know for a fact that Mickey Mouse is gonna miss me for my birthday this year, but I can't go see him because of quarantine. It was rough not seeing all of my family over the holidays, but we couldn't because we needed to quarantine. And can I get one saint, just one saint, that misses being packed in church and sweating and hollering and running and high-fiving and fainting and bucking, but it's gonna be a minute. Because of quarantine, I think though that what makes this palatable is that we ultimately believe that it's only for a season. We fully understand the purpose and meaning for the separation. Even though we all struggle with it, we can logically put together why it makes sense and how it will work out in the end. But what do we do when it's not the government? When it's not because of medical risk and it's not a personal choice, but instead it's a call to quarantine. A call, pulling, spiritual leading. How do we wrap our minds around it when God calls us to quarantine? When God says separate, when God mandates isolation, what is our response when the orders really come from up above? I'm talking about a call to quarantine because you see, that's what I see in the text today. I see this prophet's widow being called into quarantine. She wasn't contagious and she wasn't at risk. She was called. Let me tell you why. Because it says that the man of God, Elisha, told her, go and get empty jars from all your neighbors. Don't ask for just a few. Then go into your house and shut the door behind you and your sons. Through the prophet, Jarrell, she was called to close herself up with only those in her household and not let anybody in. She was called for a season to quarantine. And for some reason, that part of the story sticks out to me. Why would he specifically tell her to shut the door, to close herself in with she and her sons? She obviously didn't start out with anything that anybody could steal. And she really didn't have anything to hide except poverty. And everybody probably already knew that. Yet he tells her to go in and shut the door behind her. This leads me to believe that there was a purpose, a reason, a motive for this call to quarantine. There was something that needed to happen behind the door of her dwelling that required that she shut some stuff out. And I believe, as always, that we're able to take the word of God and dig in so that we can see how to apply it to our daily lives. In our own times of separation, isolation, and being kept away from the world, we might want to consider the fact that it might not be man and it might be God. We might not be mandated into quarantine, but we might be called. into quarantine. Can we examine ourselves for just a moment this morning? Why might God call me? Why might God call you into quarantine? First of all, we might be called into quarantine in order to shut out the fear of what's threatening us. The widow was afraid. Her husband had been a prophet working in some capacity with Elisha and his ministry. Now he was dead, but the dead that he left was yet alive. And it was absolutely legal for his creditors to take those who owed money or their families as servants in order to work off the unpaid debt. And since her husband is gone, she now lives with the threat that her sons were about to be taken away from her. She had the possibility of loss, peril, and separation hanging over her head day and night. She likely felt vulnerable, exposed, and defenseless against the threat that hung over what she loved. I don't think y'all are hearing me this morning. Her husband is dead. She has 2 children to raise on her own. Yeah. She has a debt that she cannot pay. She has no job, and we can infer no family to help her out. And as a woman, she had no power and no voice. And someone has the power to come in and snatch the last thing that she had that she really cared about. No, let me make it more real for the real folks. She was about to get put out. She was about to have the system take her kids. She did not have a fat insurance policy. She didn't have no job. And in her mind, she probably felt that there was no way out. And then shaking from the fear of every threat against her, she's called to quarantine. I came to hypothesize this morning that maybe she got the call because she was on the brink of allowing the threats in her life to paralyze her. Perhaps her fear was rendering her incapable of reasonable optimism and faith-based hope. Maybe she needed the call to quarantine in order to separate her from what was intimidating her. My first argument this morning is that sometimes God has to put a barrier between the world's threats against you and your remembrance of his ability to keep you. She might have needed to be shut away for a time in order to shock some courage back into her system, because it seems that she was allowing the threat of the enemy to pump her into hopelessness. Here's where I make it practical right here. Might there be something in our lives that we are allowing to threaten us into hopelessness? Is there a literal or figurative bully in our life that has paralyzed us into conscious inactivity? Have we gotten to the point that we've given up, not because of the enemy's actual action against us, but simply at the threat of it? So now God has called us into quarantine in order to neutralize the fear of the threat. He's threatened us with growing alone. So we settle for a dysfunctional relationship because of the fear of the threat. He's threatened us with rejection. So we're compromising to fit in with the crowd because of the fear of the threat. He's threatened us with academic failure. So we've given up our educational pursuits because of the fear of the threat. I didn't say because it actually happened, but because of what the enemy has told us could happen. Do you mind preaching to yourself this morning? We need to ask ourselves a question. Come on and ask yourself this morning, have I let a threat take me out? Yeah, I had to ask myself that question. Have I let a threat take me out? Because the word of God for the people of God today is what threatened you and made you stop believing? What threatened you and made you stop hoping? What threatened you and made you start running? Let me pull up inside of you for a minute so I can ask you, can you just stand firm on the fact that the threat of the enemy cannot stand against the promise from God? Yeah, he said, I'm going to call you into into quarantine so you can build your spiritual thug back up. I know this is the most gutter prophecy ever, but the Holy Spirit said, what did I tell you about the weapon formed against you? Let me get you by yourself so I can deal with you about your faith and my power. The enemy threatened you with lack, but I promised you will be abundant. Shut the door. The enemy threatened you with disease, but I promised you stripes to be healed. Shut the door. The enemy threatened you with chaos, but I promise you perfect peace. Shut the door, because no child of mine is going to live in fear of a threat that has absolutely no authority. Is there anybody out there this morning that's struggling with what the enemy might do? Is it anybody out there today that's worried about what could happen to you? Come on, don't be ashamed out there. Do I have just one somebody that let a threat take you out this year? Then come on and say amen. But I don't want you to be ashamed this morning because God sent a word for you through me. Here's the rest of your blood of prophecy. Ain't nothing coming for you that God can't overpower. Every threat outside your door is about to end up with this back dirty. Every threat that's against you is nothing but an invitation for God to unleash a Nate Robinson on the enemy. Can I just preach to somebody that's stressed? Can I tell you what I learned in my quarantine? I found out that the best way to bring out the spiritual thug in me is for the enemy to threaten me. I might be scared for a minute. I might forget God's power for a second. But after God gets me by myself, I remember that every threat is a threat without merit. When you high-five somebody, you just preach to somebody by typing and say, don't you dare let a threat take you out. Because for every threat, God has a counter threat. Will you just speak to the enemy this morning and say, don't you threaten me. Whatever you do, don't you threaten me. Don't you threaten my family. Don't you threaten my future. It's all right if you go and do what you're going to do. But don't you dare threaten me. Because I believe that God told the enemy, if you touch her, I'll strengthen her. If you attack him, I'll make him stronger. If you bring her down, I'll raise her up higher. If you make him cry, I'll see his tears. If you break her heart, I'll pump up her spirit. If you steal his happiness, I'll double his joy. For every threat that the enemy has, God has got a counter threat. Can somebody open up your mouth and say, I didn't get caught in quarantine. I was called to quarantine to shut out the threats that had me in fear. Secondly, we might be called into quarantine to shut out the reminders of what we don't have. Because see, if the prophet's widow had left the door open, she would have seen all the other families that were still intact. That's right. If the prophet's widow had left the door open, she would have seen those mamas that were not struggling to feed their children. Yeah, if she had left the door open, she would have seen all the people looking in on her and her lack. Perhaps she had to shut the door. Perhaps she was called into quarantine so that she wouldn't be tempted to wallow in the reminders of what she did not have. See, that's where I get back to me and you this morning, because oftentimes we spend too much time gazing at longing for, coveting, and lusting after what we do not have. So much so that we overlook what we do have. Remember, because see, when the man asked her what she had, she said nothing but a little bit of oil. And what the Lord told me to tell the people of God is that He had to separate us, He had to isolate us, He had to quarantine us because we spend too much time in a nothing but mindset. Here's where my feet walk a little heavy this morning. For some of the folks like me that get caught up in a nothing but mentality, God calls us into our individual quarantine. If you want to look at the blessings that I have given you and then come back with a nothing but report, then let me get you by yourself and shut you up behind the door. Because then I can show you, this is what He said to me, what nothing really looks like. Do y'all mind if I shut the door for a moment this morning and show you what God schooled me with when He called me into quarantine? He said, shut the door. Since you want to talk about nothing but. He said, shut the door. Since your report is nothing but. And when God got me behind that door, He said, I told you to shut the door because I've given you nothing but grace. He said, shut the door because I've given you nothing but mercy. Shut the door because I've granted you nothing but favor and favor. He said, shut the door because I've made nothing but ways out of no ways. I gotta preach it like He gave it to me. He said, shut the door because I've been nothing but a healer. He said, shut that door because I've been nothing but a good father. Come on, shut the door, girl, because I've given you nothing but chance after chance. Shut the door because I've given you nothing but love every day. And now I had to get you by yourself so that rather than focusing on what you don't have, you can remember all that I already gave you. Do I have anybody in the house this morning? Do I have anybody that's watching virtually that knows anything about just a little bit of something? A little bit of income, a little bit of patience, a little bit of resources, a little bit of marriage left, a little bit of self-confidence, a little bit of self-esteem. But if you're in the house this morning and God ever had to get you behind the door and remind you that He gave you more than nothing but a little bit you're talking about, will you just open up your mouth in revelation and say, all I need is just a little bit, and God will take my little bit and do the rest. If I got any real church folks out there, if you open up your mouth where you are and holler, He's a stretcher. All I need is a little bit of support because God is a stretcher. All I need is a little bit of finances because God is a stretcher. All I need is a little bit of faith because God is a stretcher. Do I have somebody that'll say, all I need is a little bit of oil, and God will stretch it all out until every one of my needs are met? Do I have anybody out there this morning that God has ever stretched anything? Do I have anybody that'll be a witness that'll say, all I had was a little bit, and God stretched it and made it enough? Now I need some real out there that'll say, if the world looked at what I had, they never would have thought I'd make it. But I knew the stretcher, and He took my little bit and He made it go all the way. We might be called into quarantine to shut out the fear of what's threatening us. We might be called into quarantine quarantine to shut out the reminders of the little bit we have. And lastly, we might be called into quarantine because every miracle has a set revelation date. Because while God was working on the miracle in the widow's life, everybody didn't need to watch. Everybody didn't need to see all of the inner workings of what God was doing in her life. God might have called her into her private quarantine because when her breakthrough was revealed, it needed to be seen as the great miracle it was. There was some work behind the door that made her miracle come to pass. There was some feeling behind the door that constituted her miracle. And I came to preach to somebody that every miracle in your life has got a specific revelation date because the woman didn't come back out until all of her jars were full. Can I preach to somebody that's isolated? Can I preach to somebody that feels like God has built you up and left you all alone? God told me to tell you that there's a miracle taking place in your life, and it cannot be revealed until you are full. God said, I don't need Daddy and everybody. All up in the midst while I'm trying to work a miracle in you. I said, I don't need no witnesses while I fill you up. Because when it's time for your miracle, I'll reveal it right on time. God told me to preach directly to you, and I don't even know who you is. But he said, you've been empty in public long enough. Now it's time for the private filling before your public overflow. I don't know who that word is for, but I gotta give it to you one more time. In case you walked into the kitchen, or in case you flushed right there. God said, you've been empty in public long enough, and now it's time for me to fill you privately before I reveal your public overflow. God said, shut the door of people's opinions. He said, shut the door of unrealistic expectations. Shut the door of your frivolous desires. Shut the door of your immature demands. God said, shut the door of your expired grudges. Shut the door of your meaningless relationships. He said, shut the door on your faithless existence. Shut the door of mediocre efforts. God said, shut the door of stereotypical bitterness. Shut the door of limited vision casting. He said, and when you shut it, and I begin to work in you, don't you dare come out. Don't you dare open the door until you are full. God is calling somebody to shut the door in your life and get to work. And get to work on getting yourself full. Do I have anybody that'll lift up your hands and say, I know I need to do some work to fill myself back up. But God told me to tell you that when he's done God gets me out of this. Come on, say, when God gets me out of this. When God opens me back up. When God shows what we've been working on. Come on, open up your mouth and say, when God gets me out of this. When God gets me out of this. I'm coming out full. I'm coming out full. I'm coming out full. Full of joy. Full of joy. My heart full. My bag full. My joy full. My love full. Don't worry about what's happening behind my door. Don't worry about what I had to buy from your house. Don't worry about what you and God had a conversation about. Don't worry about you're not children. Don't worry about who I owe. Shut my door and then get to work. Shut my door. I gotta get quarantined. But when I come out, but when I come out, but when I come out, somebody say, "Fool, I'ma be full." Somebody say, "Fool, I'ma be full." Shut my door. I gotta get filled. Shut my door. I gotta get filled. I'm trying to be funny, but I'm running on empty. I'm trying to be bougie, but I'm almost out. And it is obvious that man can't provide what I need to make it the rest of the way. Shut the door and let God fill you up. Shut the door and let God reveal your life. Shut the door and let God deal with the threats. Somebody open your mouth and prophesy over yourself with just one word. Come on, say Lord. Come on, say Lord. Come on, say Lord. When I come out, when I come out, when I get out of 2020, when I get out of seclusion, when I get out of debt, when I get out of loneliness, somebody speak over your life and say, Lord, 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 Lord. God didn't call you into quarantine for nothing. God didn't call you away from your family for nothing. God didn't separate you from your church for nothing. He brought it to make sure. If everybody was in the sanctuary, I'd have us high five each other and say, "Full, full, full." Your house full, house full, your family full, your family full, your children full, my children full. Somebody thank Him for the overflow. You're about to live for the rest of your life. I need your service because God's been working on it in the house by myself. I just need 30 seconds, we ready to go. But I'm going to give God a praise for what He's been doing on the inside of us. Yeah, that's all I need to do. I just need the enemy to know that I came in empty. I lost everything. I came in with nothing. My joy was empty. Nothing. Peace outside. No place to lay my head. But when I shut the door, when I shut the door, that's the whole purpose. You are not isolated because God forgot you. You are not isolated because God is punishing you. Shut the door. Stop dipping back out. Peeping at what everybody else has got. Shut the door. You and your children. You and your family. Shut the door. And you spread out what God told you to spread out. And then you let God begin to pour. And you let Him pour until the pouring ceases. And at that moment, you will have enough for the rest of your life. Can I just testify that at my lowest moment, when I was by myself, in that place, God still works on me. He still builds on me every day. But in that place, behind that door is where I got everything that I needed for the rest of my life. To preach the rest of my life. To press the rest of my life. To not give up the rest of my life. To understand that God was always going to be there the rest of my life. When I shut that door and got by myself and didn't have nothing, that's where I got everything. Don't worry about being quarantined. Don't worry about being by yourself. Don't worry about being isolated and lonely. Let God show you in that spiritual quarantine. Let God show you in this physical quarantine. Let Him show you all that you have. Let God show you that no threat against you is going to be able to prosper. And let God show you the miracles that He's working. that he's going to reveal at a later time. God is working a miracle on somebody right now, right there by yourself. If you let him show you. The doors of the church are open. If there's somebody that wants to give your life to Christ, come. If there's somebody that wants to reconcile your relationship with Christ, come. And if there's somebody that's looking for a church home, come. This is your invitation. You know what God has been saying to you while you've been shut away. He's told you it's time to do something different. He's told you it's time for you to come back to me. He's told you it's time for you to get to work. Come. Is there one? Come on. Come on. Type it in the comments. Send me a message.
I wanna run over. I wanna run over. So fill me up until I overflow. I wanna run over. I wanna run over. So fill me up until I overflow. I wanna run over. I wanna run over. So fill me up until I overflow. I wanna run over. Wanna run over.
Listen, people of God, we're getting ready to go. As we go, what we pray is the last leg of this journey we've been on. This time of separation, isolation in so many ways. Get everything that God has for you in this moment. I'm determined to get everything that God has to teach me in this moment. Brother Rodney taught this morning that my miracle may be contingent upon what I get filled up with here. And I may need to deal with some stuff here behind the closed door before I go out and take hold of what God has for me. I love you. I'll see you on Thursday night for our New Year's Eve service. Please join in wherever you are. Bring in the new year with Jesus on your mind. You may be dismissed.